Welcome back to the Rundown Lab, where we break down and fact check the biggest health podcasts. We know your time is valuable, but when you can, we always recommend catching the full episode. Links are in the description. Here's something that might surprise you. Alzheimer's disease doesn't affect men and women equally. In fact, the disparity is striking enough that researchers have been studying it since the 1990s. But how much of what we hear about this topic is actually accurate? Today, we're examining a conversation between Dr. Peter Attia and neuroscientist Dr. Lisa Mosconi, who has spent years researching why women's brains seem to show Alzheimer's-related changes earlier than men's. Let's separate the solid science from the oversimplifications. What they got right. I'll start by saying this episode gets a lot right, and Dr. Mosconi clearly knows her subject matter. First, the core statistic. In this episode, Dr. Mosconi discusses how Alzheimer's disease affects roughly twice as many women as men. The evidence strongly supports this. Nearly 2/3 of Americans living with Alzheimer's are women, and this pattern holds globally. The exact ratio varies somewhat between studies, ranging from about 1.5 to 1 up to 2 to 1, but the female predominance is well established. She also accurately points out that this female predominance is specific to Alzheimer's. Other dementias show different patterns. Parkinson's disease with dementia, for instance, is more common in men, following the pattern of Parkinson's disease itself. Vascular dementia appears roughly equal between the sexes, or slightly more common in men. The discussion of when Alzheimer's actually begins was spot on. Dr. Mosconi explained that Alzheimer's-related brain changes start in midlife, potentially 15 to 20 years before any symptoms appear. This is now well-established science. The National Institute on Aging recognizes Alzheimer's as a biological continuum that begins long before memory problems become noticeable. Her own research findings also check out. Studies published by Dr. Mosconi and her colleagues have shown that women in their 40s through 60s who carry Alzheimer's risk factors show more biomarker changes on brain scans than men of the same age with similar risk profiles. This includes reduced brain glucose metabolism and increased amyloid protein accumulation. Another accurate point. She discussed how women's brains can show more Alzheimer's pathology than men's brains at equivalent levels of symptoms. Autopsy studies confirm this. And she correctly identified a reason why. Standard cognitive tests rely heavily on verbal memory, where women tend to have an advantage. This means women might maintain normal-appearing test scores even as disease progresses, potentially delaying diagnosis. Finally, the mortality statistics she mentioned are accurate. In England, Australia, and several other developed countries, dementia has become the leading cause of death for women, but not for men. Where it gets complicated. Now, let's address a couple of claims that need some refinement. Dr. Mosconi suggested that after age, female sex is the strongest risk factor for developing Alzheimer's, and that this has been known since the 1990s. This is oversimplified. Yes, being female roughly doubles your Alzheimer's risk. But the APOE epsilon 4 gene variant, which she also discusses elsewhere, increases risk by 3 to 15 times, depending on whether you carry 1 or 2 copies. Here's what makes this complicated. These factors interact. Carrying the APOE4 gene actually confers greater risk in women than in men. So rather than ranking them as first and second strongest risk factors, it's more accurate to say that female sex and APOE4 are both major risk factors that amplify each other. She also discussed frontotemporal dementia as being more prevalent in men. The reality is more nuanced. Frontotemporal dementia includes several subtypes. The behavioral variant may indeed be slightly more common in men, but primary progressive aphasia variants appear more balanced between sexes. The evidence is genuinely mixed, and researchers haven't reached consensus on this one. One smaller point. She mentioned the longevity gap between men and women in England is about 2 years. Current data from the Office for National Statistics puts it closer to 3 to 4 years. This doesn't change her larger argument, but precision matters. Red flags. There's one claim that contradicts the available evidence. Dr. Mosconi stated that Lewy body dementia affects men and women equally, at roughly 50-50 prevalence. Multiple studies actually suggest Lewy body dementia is more common in men, with male-to-female ratios around 1.5 to 1, or even 2 to 1, similar to Parkinson's disease. This makes sense biologically, as Lewy body dementia shares pathological features with Parkinson's. Now, to be fair, Lewy body dementia is notoriously difficult to diagnose, and epidemiological data is less robust than for Alzheimer's. But the weight of evidence points toward male predominance, not equal distribution. This is worth noting because the episode's central argument is that Alzheimer's uniquely affects women more than other dementias. Getting the comparison dementias wrong could mislead listeners about what makes Alzheimer's distinctive. The bottom line. Overall, this is a scientifically credible conversation. Of 17 claims we examined, 8 were fully accurate, 5 were mostly accurate with minor caveats, 2 were oversimplified, and only 1 was genuinely misleading. Dr. Mosconi's core message holds up. Women do face higher Alzheimer's risk beyond just living longer, and sex-specific biological factors, particularly around menopause, likely play a role. Her research on midlife brain changes in women represents legitimate, peer-reviewed science. The main takeaway? If you're a woman with a family history of Alzheimer's or other risk factors, the research suggests that brain changes may begin earlier than previously thought. This makes a strong case for discussing prevention strategies with your doctor well before old age. And for everyone, remember that the APOE4 gene and female sex don't operate independently. Understanding how your personal risk factors interact is more useful than ranking them. This episode gets the big picture right while occasionally oversimplifying the details. That's better than most health podcasts manage, and it's a conversation worth having.